Our government is representative, and that means we don't do it ourselves. So if you're going to understand the form of our government, which form is unique, you'll have to understand something that's in the Declaration of Independence as a precursor. And that thing is consent, or consent of the governed. So then the argument would have to go like this, that there's such a thing as a human, that all the things that are like that are equal in some respect. That this
Stopping by at our town office here.
Governed only by
There's
their
people here,
consent,
but they got the building
that gives
closed,
rise to the
but yet it's
structure of the
closed
Constitution.
to the town
So to
taxpayers.
connect all those things up,
Meanwhile,
to retrace
the candidates
of the American
aren't allowed to hand in their nomination
We're talking
papers
about representative government.
because they don't want to be
Why
questioned
consent?
by the other candidates who
What
are
is
stepping up
consent
to the
and
plate.
why?
We're going to go down here,
kind of more or less a social.
right down the road there to our library,
Both parties are
and send them it
conditions.
certified mail
We, as
so that they
people being
can't say
governed,
that it wasn't
are
in
allowing
by the
those
due
who are in
date,
power to look
which, as
over
you
and
guys could
provide
see,
the necessary security
it's not
so
April
we can,
15th
as
yet,
they put,
and they're
pursue our
closed
happiness.
till who knows
So,
when.
in the Declaration of
So
Independence,
nobody's
what do they say
able to
about social
hand in their nomination papers at the town office, yet
reference
somebody's allowed to utilize the town office with the
Where?
doors locked and
Well,
closed.
The social contract.
It's a questionable
assumes
reality
that
here.
there are laws
and It's a
of nature.
tyrannical
As you
tactic
enter
by
into
the
social
selectmen of
contract,
Brownfield,
you're leaving
Maine.
The state of nature.
It sounds a bit like John Locke.
A tactic to shut people up and to stop
so,
concerned citizens from getting involved.
We have to be careful.
If-
not to
as you
get
guys can
pissing
see,
our own tails.
Yet again,
And so
our
the
boards
nightstick
are
is just
empty,
something direct and simple,
and our town
understandable,
is
right?
as
Like,
stagnant as a
if
ghost
we're
town.
Equal, you wouldn't have the authority.
But that's because
to do
of
something to me
our
unless I
tyrannical selectmen whose
Whereas
agenda
the
it
king
is, in
answered
fact,
the
to make it a stagnant reality
He
here
gave
in
an address from
Brownfield,
the
Maine.
throne, and he gave an
But
answer.
we'll be handing
Caused
in
it-
our
this
nomination
answer, this address
papers
from the throne, he caused
as
it
we
to
got
be
over
distributed
25
across the
signatures on
lines
here,
at the siege
and
of
that's a
Boston.
wrap.
And he
These
basically
guys
said,
didn't want
"I was born to
any
be
other
king
candidates
here.
to step up to the plate,
You were born to be
and
the subject.
especially they didn't want
And
Vincent
I am
Peter
required
Carbone
to look after
to
you,
step
be
up
good
to the
you,
plate.
take care of you, to
But
do what's in your
ready or
ways.
not, here we come. You guys better get your act together because you guys said
thought
you got a
that would
debate
turn
for
the
me,
whole thing around.
yet you're nowhere to be
And
found,
at the moment that he
pleading the
distributed this
fifth
thing across the
continually
lines,
and leaving the
to
governing
the
body
Continental Army,
to be left to the intentionally
it was melting
portrayed
away
miscommunication
because their-
in attempts
their
to
enlistments were
continue
and
your
they read that
narrative.
thing and they went, "What?
Thank you very much, Chief
Is that what he
Selectman
thinks?
William Flynn. Your time is
we're
up.
Staying. We're gonna
And
do this
as
thing,
well as
right?
the Walkers,
The
Eric and
king's
Cindy
idea
Walker,
is
Ricky
that
Emery.
I was born with
You
an
guys got a
obligation.
lot of
You were
answering
born
to
with an
do
obligation.
about
We
your
both have to
tyrannical
do our
tactics,
thing.
which you continue to
And we're born
utilize
that way.
today.
And the Declaration of
We got our
It says
elected officials and town
We're all
employees
born
working in the office,
equal in that
but it's
sense
closed.
that I named, right? We're not dogs.
Just so that the
Until the
tyrannical
dogs start
tactic
talking.
to stop
So
the
that's
nomination
what they say.
papers coming in.
And if it's like that,
But they got no excuse
Then
because mine are
you
in,
get to be our
whether they
king.
like it or not.
if we say so.
Stop by.
There's a really great document.
Got the flag up
reading
finally.
Of course, but I encourage everyone.
These
to
guys,
read it in our
Ben had their flag up,
It was written by Thomas Jefferson, who of course
but
was
that's a different
a
story
very powerful writer.
because these guys got a better ethic and better morals than our
It's called
selectmen.
a summary view of the rights of British
We're going to
government.
address these guys.
And in there, he goes on and on and on, and he explains, you get to be the king if we say so. You have to do what we say. In the last paragraph, which I'll paraphrase, he says, let those flatter who fear. It is not an American art. Your counselors are
Figure it out.
partisans, not drawn from us, right? So he's telling the king what for, you know? And if
You guys can see, it is a doornail. Nothing but the fitness memberships on this.
Don't tread on me. We have a right. We are born the same as you. You get your carriage since you got it already. It's just that you don't get to tell us what to do from it. Consent is born in equality in that way, right? And just you just have to remember that we Americans, we just breathe that from birth. We get that with mother's milk. You know, that's what we think. We think we're born equal. It's
Went to the
reason
post
why
office. They ended up sending
we
me a
think
certified
we
mail.
can do whatever
Wonder
we
what this
want
could be.
if we work hard enough. It's the reason
Complaining
I
about everything,
you know,
probably.
my dad's
We'll get to the bottom of it. We got other people down here
right? But
trying to get in over
I
there.
didn't know that wasn't the grandest thing in the world to be.
But they're knocking
I
on
knew
the
we
door.
weren't rich.
Nobody's
But I
letting
didn't
anybody
think
in.
Anybody was born better than I, nor I better than anybody else.
Excuse me?
Churchill like.
Does it have a sign on the door there saying they're closed or anything?
It's
What do you know what time it says they're open?
Is as good as everybody else, or a little better.
It says the sign says April 25th they open.
Very witty. So,
wonder
so now, if you're going to have consent,
I wonder if I could get
that's a
that.
very radical thing to think,
Oh, it's on the website.
He
Oh,
only
perfect.
didn't
Thank
think
you.
that, right? The fact
So
that
they're
he
not.
gave
They're
that
you knock. They're
address
not even
from
coming
the
at the door.
phone
They're
and had it
closed, but there's
distributed.
employees here or
He thought that would
something.
be persuasive.
I'm trying to put in my nomination
Later,
papers,
they
and
said, Ben
we have the
Franklin.
deadline tomorrow.
Let's say a very artful.
I sent them a certified message.
We all know what that
Right now I'm they have me trespassed,
For
so I can't
example,
go over there
he
right
was
now.
The world's greatest spokesman for.
But they're going to have to answer to a lot of the questionable realities they continue to portray in our
To
community.
negotiate. He didn't get on well. They liked him better in Paris. He went there too. And he gets over there. And he
Yeah,
talks
there's a
with the
bunch of
cabinet.
people showing up.
And the
They're supposed to be
cabinet says,
open today.
We, as
Community
another
members aren't
country,
very thrilled
you
about
are the children,
what's going on
and
here.
you must do what we say.
You
And he
see
writes a
more
letter
people
back
showing up.
to the Continental Congress and says, "There's going to be a war."
Wonder if they'll be able to get in.
What they think is, and remember, what they think is what everybody thinks.
So she might. Somebody's
It's what the
waiting
King
for
of
her, I
France
guess.
thinks, who later subsidized our revolution. It's what they all think. It's what the whole world has thought from time immemorial. And these guys don't think that. That's
Very
a
remarkable
development.
disheartening.
And what we're going to talk about now is the amazing
I don't know what's going on in this town.
this idea.
We got our certified
If they can
letter in.
only do it to you. if
These
you
guys
say
got
so,
their flag up.
then
These guys over here finally got
things
one up.
become possible
But
in
it took them
arranging
forever to do it. We got some storage units over here. If you guys ever need any storage units.
Welcome back. Today we'll be discussing the Civil Rights Act of
Right across the
1964,
street.
which is the
Got this
culmination
nice
of the
little
Second Reconstruction
laundromat.
and the height of the civil rights.
Go check it out
movement.
here. See what's going on.
This act really had its origins
laundromat.
in the Supreme Court's decision 10 years
That's a
earlier
shame that
of
people
Brown
are
versus
out there
Board of
knocking on the
Education
door.
in 1954.
You got employees in there
that case,
working,
the Supreme
using
Court
the
finally
town's building,
overturned the precedent
but they're not
Plessy v.
allowed to
Ferguson,
answer the
which
door
accepted
because the
separate and
selectmen
equal
tell
as a
them
constitutional
don't answer the
standard
door.
of
And they
equality.
also tell them
In
don't
public
speak
schools, the Supreme Court
with
said
Vincent
separate
Peter
was
Carbone.
inherently
And they're not allowed to.
And then the Supreme Court,
They are
when a
forced
number
to
of subsequent
plead the
decisions
fifth
went on
due to our
strike
town's
down
lawyer
segregation
being
in
colluded
other
with
places
the
of
selectmen
public
and their
accommodations,
tyrannical tactics,
restaurants, hotels,
utilizing
cafes.
our taxpaying dollars to pay
The
their
problem was
litigation
that for
costs,
10
which
years
they
after the
continue
court's
to
decision,
incur.
There really wasn't any enforcement of the constitutional right to equal.
Hey,
government.
Megan, I got my
As a
nomination
result of
papers.
this, black civil rights organizations.
There's
principally
Megan
Martin
Witt.
Luther King Southern Christian Leadership
So Megan Witt's in there.
undertook a series
Megan Witt's in
of
there
direct
today, but
action
she's not
campaigns,
accepting nomination
in which,
papers.
Black Americans
So at least we
tried
documented
to,
Megan
realize
Witt's
the
there.
rights that the Supreme Court said that they had through various sit-ins and
So
demonstrations.
that's the
which
concern
reached a
right there.
culmination in,
Megan Witt
Burlington
is the
in
selectman's
1963,
assistant.
summer of 1963. And especially with the advent of television in
See
the
if we got
1960s,
anything on the
the
board in
American
here.
population began to see the violence that stood
The
behind
house for
system
sale?
of segregation. Bull Connor, especially the public official in Birmingham, with the water cannons and attack dogs and things like that. It took 10 years, but finally Congress was forced to act and to
bunch of different
implement
things here.
a law that would put into effect the principle of desegregation. President John F. Kennedy finally made a national address in June of
Nice little
1963
laundromat here.
calling for Congress to enact a Civil Rights Act.
So we got Megan Witt working today.
Whether all Americans
She's not answering the door for people unless they got special privileges or something, I guess. The door was locked, but they let somebody in.
If in America because his skin
But they
is
won't
dark,
take my nomination papers
cannot eat
when
lunch
tomorrow's
in a
the
restaurant
deadline is
open to the
tomorrow.
public. If
And
he
we're here
cannot send
today
his children to the best public school available,
with our nomination papers,
if he cannot vote
and they're not
for the
accepting
public
them.
officials who represent him, if in short he cannot.
Then
appearance of
President Kennedy was
impropriety, to
assassinated
say the
in
least.
November of 1963, and his successor, Lyndon Johnson, was able to turn the Civil Rights Act into a kind of monument.
We're getting down to the bottom of it.
To the legacy.
This
of
place will be
President
back
John
up
F.
and
Kennedy.
running.
Johnson was also
We'll be
from his
utilizing our
Senate
community
experience,
center over there.
Knew how that institution
There'll
worked.
always be
And
a
Johnson was
message
finally
on the
able to
board.
break the
It won't ever be
filibuster, which had
empty
always
like that.
killed earlier civil rights
That
movement.
one will,
So in
will be
1964, finally,
updated
Congress
and
passed
documented
the
as
Civil
well
Rights
for the
Act.
community center.
Its three principal
Right now it only
titles,
has the
were Title
fitness
II
memberships
about
on
public
it.
accommodations,
This one for
Title
the town
VI about
office
federal
has nothing
aid,
on it whatsoever.
to institutions,
Our community
and Title
center is
VII, which
closed
the new one about employment.
Still.
Title II is
And
the
then
one that was
they closed down
chiefly
the
concerned
office
in the
today,
Civil
so
Rights
we
Act,
can't do
because this had to
town
do with,
business
desegregating
until they
restaurants,
want us
hotels,
to,
so-called
which happens
places
to be
of public
a later
accommodations.
date past
Again,
the
this was
date
giving
of the
legislative
due date for the
and
nomination
enforcement
papers being
to the
handed
rights
in.
that the Supreme Court said that
So
Black
they don't want any
Americans had.
candidates to
And
step
this
up
was
to the
most
plate.
high-profile and controversial
A funny
of
tactic
all
they're
the titles
utilizing
of the Civil
here.
Rights Act. But it was the one that had most to do with what had traditionally been considered
We'll
civil
be
rights.
addressing all this stuff.
It's rather surprising that after the law was passed, most Southerners
They got a lot of
complied with
answering
it
to do for
relatively
the
quickly
crimes they
and peacefully,
continue
and
to
didn't
commit.
require much enforcement. The most interesting thing about the Civil Rights
We'll
Act
be
of 1964
on top of
was
it.
didn't pretend to be Congress
More
exercising the
citizens
power to
trying to
enforce the
utilize
14th Amendment.
our
Section
town
5
office today,
of the
and they're
14th
turned
Amendment
away.
says that Congress has the power to enforce it by appropriate legislation.
It seems as
Instead,
if
Congress said
our
it was
elected
exercising
officials
the
and
power
town
to regulate
employees could
commerce
make
among
whatever
the states,
hours they
interstate
please,
commerce power.
thanks to
It had
their
gotten into this
tyrannical
habit ever
chief
since the New
selectman,
Deal, and
who's
for the
making
next
sure they
decades,
manipulate their
the
ways.
Supreme Court pretty much accepted that Congress could do
We're getting the
almost
bottom of
anything
it.
that it wanted under the interstate commerce power. So it was rather peculiar that this really didn't concern, Congress said, the 14th Amendment at all, but rather was sort of economic regulation. And when the Civil Rights Act was challenged, the court accepted it on interstate commerce grounds. Title VI was also innovative because it said that any program that received federal financial aid could not exclude, segregate, or discriminate on the basis of race. This was also a sign that the federal government's involvement in regulating the national economy, this would be especially important for institutions of educational institutions, first colleges and universities, and then secondary schools when Congress began to increase its funding for them. So this was Congress using its so-called spending power, the idea that more and more American institutions depended upon congressional spending, and so they were now bound by anti-discrimination rules. But Title VII was the most innovative and controversial provision in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. President Kennedy originally did not include an employment title that would apply to private employers, although there was a program of government contracting that we'll talk about in due course. This was added by Senate liberals, and it followed the model of a lot of state laws that prohibited discrimination on the basis of race in the private employment sector in the labor force. So this was a new one and a late addition to it, and it had potentially enormous impact because just about, again, almost every American employer would be covered by this title. And the problem was, as many members of Congress pointed out, that the title which said that it was illegal.
We started out and we thought that there are some principles, that basic things from which all things flow, and we think that those are stated in the Declaration of Independence, and they give rise to constitutionalism. And we went on to say that the Constitution depends upon certain broad things in its structure, and the chief of those is separation of powers. And all that really means, separation of powers, is that the kinds of powers in government are divided into different branches, and the same people don't hold them at the same time. And that means more than one person is running the government all the time in all of its different functions. And more than one group of people is running them. And James Madison says that's the most important thing about the Constitution, and it gives the Constitution its structure. How does it become possible for us to have separation of powers? What are the grounds of that are laid in the Constitution?
Well, it establishes the three branches, the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive, and by making them distinct in
So
some...
now, that's what that is. What lays the ground for that? How does it come to be possible for them to set up that system that I'm going to turn back to you, Emily, to describe to us all when I'm ready? I get to be the teacher. So, Casey, what are you going to say?
They write it all down in the Constitution. So the Constitution, it basically sets up all the different facets of the legislative, judiciary, executive branches. So after that, we can really talk about the different powers that they all have.
And it seems like the Constitution is sort of the fruits of those seeds that we saw in the Declaration of Independence, where they saw God in like these three roles, like divine providence, supreme judge, and the laws of nature.
Okay, now that's, remember our code, right? So that was, that wasn't good enough, but it was on the way. So if you take that, which actually was not responsive to my question, and that, we're on the way to the answer I'm looking for. Sure. And the question is, so you say, it's like the fruit of a seed that's planted in the Declaration. And what you say, Tim, is God is explained as the three branches. You need to elaborate that, because the seed is a little more direct than that in my argument.
Well, at the time, the king was trying to execute all three branches of government. In their list of injustices, it was explaining how this has led to basically a long history of tyranny. And basically, the three branches that they established in the Constitution are the three areas that the king at the time was trying to control all at the same time.
Yeah, and that's the statement that why this thing is necessary and why not to do it is bad. But think about it for a minute. So let me ask you, I said this explicitly several times yesterday, and I know you weren't listening to me because you were busy being photographed. But, but today we're going to have to think, right? Today we got up in the morning thinking we're going to work. All right, now, in the Federalist Papers, Hamilton makes the point that the judiciary is the least dangerous branch, something that might have changed. And the House of Representatives is actually the most dangerous branch. What is that about from your close reading of the Federalist?
Well,
I know what to call you. We're going to call you Spider-Man.
So my spidey senses tell me that.
There we go.
So in terms of in relation to the public, to the people, we directly vote for the representatives in the House of Representatives. Those are the people that are basically closest to our thoughts and opinions.
Now we're getting somewhere. Emily's twitching. What is it?
Well, I was thinking in relation to your first question as well as your second question, the House of Representatives, not only is it directly connected to the people, but it has the power of the purse and therefore makes it the most dangerous. But the fact that it's connected back to the people sort of leads back to the Constitutional Convention itself, and the fact that we had to go through the war and the Articles of Confederation